Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring something I think that's incredibly relevant to all of us listeners, and that's the power of language.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be looking at, how it shapes our world, how it can be used and abused, and why a rich vocabulary is so important.
Yeah.
Think of it like building up your defenses against manipulation.
That's right.
Our source material is a paper titled Vaccination Against Trumpism, The Power of Language, Trust, and the Necessity of a Rich Vocabulary.
Yeah, it's a really interesting paper that starts with this idea from Ludwig Wittgenstein. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world.
That's such a powerful quote.
It is.
I mean, it makes you realize that the words we have at our disposal literally define the boundaries of our understanding, right?
Yes, exactly. If you think about it, a larger vocabulary allows you to grasp and discuss complex ideas in a much more nuanced way. For example, imagine trying to debate economic policy or dissect an ethical dilemma with only a limited set of words. It would be incredibly difficult to articulate your thoughts accurately and engage in a meaningful discussion.
It's like trying to paint a masterpiece with only two colors.
Yes.
You might be able to convey a basic idea, but you're going to miss out on all the depth and complexity. So a rich vocabulary is like having a full palette of colors at your disposal.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. The paper argues that this link between language and understanding can be exploited, especially when we consider the concept of trust.
Okay, we're social creatures. We're wired to trust each other to some extent, right?
Right. Erik Erikson, a developmental psychologist, called this basic trust.
Okay.
It's this fundamental belief that others are generally sincere and rational. This basic trust is essential for us to function in society. But here's the catch. This inherent trust can be manipulated, especially through language.
You're saying that someone could use simplistic language to take advantage of our natural inclination to trust, but wouldn't we see through that?
Not necessarily. Think about it when someone presents a complex issue with a simple, emotionally charged solution.
Right.
It can feel very appealing. Our basic trust kicks in, and we might assume they're being straightforward and offering a genuine solution. But what's often happening is that they're bypassing critical thinking by appealing to our emotions. They're offering a quick fix that ignores the nuances of the problem.
So it's not just about the words themselves, it's about how they're used to tap into our deeper emotions and instincts.
That's a great way to put it. For example, think about advertising slogans or political sound bites.
Yeah.
They're often designed to be catchy and memorable, but they rarely capture the full complexity of the issues they're addressing.
That makes a lot of sense. So how does this idea of basic trust being exploited connect to the need for a rich vocabulary? Is the paper suggesting that a larger vocabulary can somehow protect us from this type of manipulation?
That's precisely the point the paper calls this vaccination against Trumpism. Now, it's not just about Donald Trump specifically, but he serves as a prime example.
Interesting. You're saying that by expanding our verbal toolbox, we can build up a resistance to this kind of overly simplistic, emotionally charged rhetoric.
Yes, a broader vocabulary allows you to dissect those messages, see the gaps in logic, and recognize when someone is trying to manipulate you with oversimplifications or emotionally loaded language.
I'm starting to see how this all connects. It's like having a mental filter that can screen out the noise and help you focus on the substance of the message.
That's a great analogy. Think about it. If someone is constantly using polarizing, attention-grabbing language,
Right.
It might indicate a lack of nuance and a deliberate attempt to short-circuit your critical thinking. But if you have a rich vocabulary, you're more likely to spot those red flags and demand a more nuanced and reasoned argument.
Okay, so let's dig into this idea of vaccination against Trumpism a bit more. The paper specifically uses Donald Trump as an example, but I imagine this applies to a lot of different situations, right?
Absolutely. While the paper uses Trump's rhetoric as a case study, the principles apply broadly. We see this kind of simplistic, manipulative language all the time.
Yeah.
In advertising, in social media, and even in everyday conversations.
You're right. I can definitely think of examples in the news and on social media where people use oversimplifications or inflammatory language to shut down debate or push a particular agenda.
Right.
It's almost like they're afraid of nuance.
That's a really interesting observation, and it leads us to a crucial question.
Okay.
How do we build up these linguistic defenses? If a rich vocabulary is so important, how can we go about expanding our own?
That's what I was going to ask. It's one thing to say we need a larger vocabulary, but it's another thing to actually do it.
Yeah.
Where do we even start?
Well, it's a journey, not a race. The first step is to simply become more aware of the language you encounter and start paying attention to the words people choose, especially when they're trying to persuade you of something.
So it's like being a word detective.
Yes.
Looking for clues in the language itself.
Exactly. Look for emotionally charged words, generalizations, or simplistic solutions. Ask yourself, what are they emphasizing? What are they leaving out? Are they appealing to my emotions or my reason?
That's a great exercise. I'm already starting to think differently about the news articles and social media posts I read.
Excellent. Now, the next step is to actively expand your vocabulary. And this is where a lot of people get intimidated, but it doesn't have to be a chore. It can be a fun and rewarding process.
Okay, I'm all for fun and rewarding. What are some strategies you recommend?
Reading is essential, but don't just passively read. Engage with the text. Highlight unfamiliar words, look them up, and try to use them in your own writing or conversations.
That's great advice. I often come across words I don't know while reading, but I rarely take the time to look them up. I'm definitely going to make that a priority. Now, are there any other tips you have for expanding our vocabulary?
Absolutely. Don't limit yourself to just one genre or author. Explore different writing styles and voices. Pay attention to how authors use language to create imagery, evoke emotions, and build arguments.
So it's not just about understanding the plot, but also about appreciating the craft of writing.
Precisely. Another great way to learn new words is to engage in diverse conversations. Talk to people from different backgrounds with different perspectives. Listen to how they use language.
I love that it's like expanding your vocabulary through osmosis. It's a natural byproduct of engaging with the world and the people around us.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to debate. Civil, respectful debate is a fantastic way to sharpen your language skills and refine your arguments when you're forced to defend your position. You have to search for the most precise and persuasive language.
That's so true. I've noticed that when I'm in a debate or a discussion, I'm more likely to use words and phrases that I wouldn't normally use in everyday conversation.
Yeah.
It's like my brain is working harder to find the right tools for the job.
Exactly. It's like a mental workout for your vocabulary. And finally, don't underestimate the power of etymology. The study of word origins, learning where words come from, can give you a deeper understanding of their meanings and nuances.
You know, I've always been fascinated by etymology. There's so many interesting stories behind words. It's like uncovering hidden layers of meaning.
It is, and there are some great resources available online, and in libraries it can be a fun and engaging way to learn new words and expand your understanding of language.
This is all fantastic advice.
Yeah.
I'm already feeling inspired to start building my own verbal arsenal, as you put it earlier. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to the idea of language as a vaccine. Can you elaborate on what that metaphor means to you?
The vaccination metaphor highlights the protective power of language. When you build a strong vocabulary and develop your critical thinking skills, you're essentially building up immunity to manipulation and misinformation. You're better equipped to recognize false or misleading claims, to see through emotional appeals, and to demand evidence-based arguments.
So it's like we're training our minds to be more resilient and discerning.
Precisely. And that's crucial in today's world, where we're bombarded with information from all sides. We need to be able to filter that information to separate fact from fiction and to make informed decisions based on evidence and reason, not just emotion or gut feeling.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how this idea of language as a vaccine is about more than just protecting ourselves from manipulation. It's also about empowering ourselves to be more effective communicators and more engaged citizens.
I couldn't agree more. It's about taking ownership of our language and using it to build a better world.
Well said. I think that's a powerful message for our listeners to take away. Before we go, is there anything else you want to add about the importance of expanding our vocabulary and honing our critical thinking skills?
Just to emphasize that language is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
Right.
We can use it to build bridges, to foster understanding, to create beauty, and to advocate for justice, but it can also be used to spread hate, to sow division, and to manipulate and control.
So it really comes down to how we choose to wield this tool.
Exactly, and that's why building a rich vocabulary and honing our critical thinking skills is so vital. It's not just about sounding intelligent. It's about empowering ourselves to navigate a complex world, resist manipulation, and make informed decisions.
I love that it's about taking responsibility for the words we use and the impact they have on ourselves and the world around us.
Precisely, and I think the paper we've discussed today, Vaccination against Trumpism, offers a powerful reminder of this. It's a call to action to become more conscious of the language we encounter and the language we use.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that words matter. They have the power to shape our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions.
And that's a power we should never take for granted.
This has been an incredibly eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on the power of language and the importance of critical thinking. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to start paying closer attention to the language you use and the language you encounter. Remember, building a rich vocabulary is a journey, not a destination.
That's right. It's an ongoing process of discovery and exploration.
So keep reading, keep listening, keep questioning, and keep expanding your toolbox of words. The world needs more thoughtful, articulate, and critically engaged citizens.
And never stop learning.
Couldn't agree more. The exploration of language is a lifelong adventure. So dive in, explore, and discover the incredible power of words. Until next time, happy wordsmithing.